United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next slide, please. President Joe Biden on Thursday stood at the military cemetery in Normandy above Omaha Beach, where 80 years ago, Allied forces surprised Hitler's army on D-Day. For today's moment of reflection, I will read a brief portion of his salient remarks. We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than at any point since these beaches were stormed in 1944. Now we have to ask ourselves, will we stand for freedom? Will we defend democracy? Will we stand together? Let us be the generation that when history is written about our time, it will be said, when the moment came, we met the moment, we stood strong, and we saved democracy in our time as well. Let us reflect. Thank you. Next slide, please. A special guest today is Kyle Alexandre, who is cutting into her mother's 77th birthday celebration to quickly tell us about the coordinated campaign to carry Florida and win the White House. Thank you, Kyle.
Wow, that's no pressure at all. Wasn't expecting that. That's a big picture of me. Okay. Good morning, Democrats. Good morning. Good morning. So as Dennis said, I am here on behalf of the Biden-Harris campaign. I am the Deputy Political Director for the state of Florida. And I am here because we are going to turn Florida blue and win back the White House. Thank you so much for having us this morning. I am here with my fellow colleague, Jackson Peel. He is our Rapid Response Deputy Director, and he's also, to make sure I don't get in trouble and say things I shouldn't say. Jackson, thank you for being here. So I have some really nice talking points that I am going to say that I'm supposed to say, and these are things that you already know. So I'm going to get through these because they are important to reiterate. But then I'm going to share some other things with you, right? Because I think those things are just as equally important, right? So we want to make sure that you know that you all have worked hard your entire lives. You deserve to live comfortably. The reason why I am leaving early because my mother too is a senior. Today is her 76th birthday, and she is a cancer survivor. She moved here from New York 3 years ago, and a year after she moved here, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'm her only child, and she lives 2 miles from me. We live in Claremont, and so thank God she is cancer-free. She's 1 lump down, but she's cancer-free. So I thought I would get back home and take her to dinner tonight. She probably will write me out of her book. So, but you know, when you retire and you live your second life, you want to make sure that you are taken care of, and you deserve to age with dignity and respect. And President Biden has spent his entire career fighting for America's seniors. And as president, he has stood up to Big Pharma, lowering prices for drugs and seniors that you all rely on for every day. I know my mother worked for the state of New York, so that's where she's come from. And I run to CVS at least every 3 days to pick up her prescriptions. Although she drives to New York and puts her car on the auto train, she for some reason can't drive to CVS, which is pretty much but that's a whole other story for another conversation because our glasses are fine. But so here are some of those accomplishments that the Biden-Harris campaign has done. Capped and limiting out-of-pocket expenses and for $2,000 for seniors and Medicaid beneficiaries. Guaranteed free vaccines for Medicaid Part D beneficiaries, resulting in 10 million enrollees receiving free vaccines. It increased from 3.4 million enrollees in 2021. Made hearing aids cheaper for over-the-counter prescription, lowering cost by average of $3,000 a pair. I think sometimes I am not a senior yet, but if you ask my partner, she's like, I know you heard me, and I'm like, huh? But maybe that's just selective for my end. Pushed 3 of the 4 largest inhaler manufacturers to cap the cost of inhalers at $35 per month. I don't know about you, but when I moved here from New York, my allergies and my breathing just got a little worse. My mom suffers from asthma, and she stays on, what is it, albuterol, is it called? Yeah, and she has, what's that thing, the nebulizer, right? So I know that those things are essential. And pushed, for that, it says $1,000 per year for 27 million Americans with asthma. Stood up to Big Pharma and won, empowered Medicare to negotiate drug prices directly with pharmaceutical companies. So those are just some of the accomplishments that, the Biden-Harris administration continues to push. Now let's talk about the other gentleman who's locked up outside. Donald Trump wants to enrich big pharma corporations. Donald Trump supported plans to end Medicare, as we know. He has plans to slash Medicare funding. During his first term, Trump appointed a top executive at Eli Lilly as the Secretary of Health. No one Republican voted for President Biden's legislation that gave Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices. Now Trump, extreme MAGA Republicans, must repeal these provisions. Oh, you can't hear me? Can you hear me? Sorry. I'm short and I have on heels today. Now, Trump and extreme MAGA Republicans want to repeal the provisions making pharma richer. President Biden and Vice President Harris are fighting to protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicaid. Americans have been working their whole lives and paying into Social Security and Medicare. And I know I am Gen X. By the time I retire, there probably will not be much in Social Security. And although it probably wasn't legal, I've been working since I was 11. I probably won't be able to rely on Social Security when I retire, right? So I have several 401ks, MMAs. I can't tell you how many different retirement accounts that I've had to have, just so I know that I can retire. The type of state retirement system that was available to my mother when she started working for New York in 1970, when I was born, is no longer available. I used to work for Disney, and the retirement systems that they had in place at Disney years ago, why people wanted to go work there, are no longer available. So I don't even know when I can retire. I'm 46. I probably will be working until I'm 86 because the retirement options that are available for, for my age. I was in the free marketplace just recently for insurance, and the insurance costs were ridiculous. So Trump will cut Social Security and Medicare while on the same time giving tax breaks to billionaire allies. In 2020, Trump said, we will be cutting earned benefits in a second term. This year, Trump said there was a lot you can do in terms of cutting Social Security and Medicare. Trump proposed cuts to Social Security and Medicare in every single one of his budgets when he was president. His MAGA allies in Congress have proposed raising the retirement age of Social Security and ending Medicare, as we know. Trump has called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. He has a long track record of trying to undermine the financial security of the 50 million seniors who rely on it. President Biden and Vice President Harris are fighting to protect seniors' hard-earned retirement and savings. President Biden and Vice President Harris are standing up to special interests in protecting retirement savings by cracking down on expensive and excessive bank fees. So he's proposing to, that 35 instead of 35 overdraft, which when I was a college student may or may not have happened to me. Now to $3. I mean, to me, that's reasonable. President Biden and Vice President Harris took action to penalize financial advisors who cost seniors tens of thousands of dollars in retirement savings by prioritizing their own commissions and fees rather than seniors' investment needs. Unlike Donald Trump, who looked union leaders in the eyes and lied, claiming he would save their hard-earned pensions, President Biden actually got it done. President Biden signed legislation to save and secure the pensions of hundreds and thousands of union workers. I can go on and on. You all know the record. You all know, as someone I was talking to, I don't see her, I mean, there you are, common sense, right?
Can I stand up and show them my common sense? Sometimes.
We all know the common sense choice. And sometimes, you know, I tell people oftentimes, some people are book smart and still not smart. And we can see the things that have happened since this administration has taken place. We've seen job growth. The economy is actually doing really well. But of course, we don't always hear that messaging. We know what the right choice is here. And the other thing we want to reiterate more than anything is vote by mail. You have to register for vote by mail every year now. It is not every 2 years. There has been a massive purge of vote by mail, especially for our Black and brown communities. They have been impacted tremendously, and for our returning citizens. So if that is not you, but you know people, friends or allies that fall under those categories, you need to emphasize they need to re-register for vote by mail. That is how we are going to move the needle in this election, is vote by mail. Please do not think that you will not be impacted by that. If you have not re-registered for a vote by mail, please do it. Do not think that it counts from last year. A lot of people forget. Under the new administration here in the state of Florida, you need to re-register. I cannot emphasize that enough. Make sure your signatures match, even when you vote in person. So we need to make sure when you are out there working the polls, when you are out there communicating with people, when they are doing their vote by mail ballot, you need to say, hey, did you re-up this year for your vote by mail? Did you re-register? Because you know if you did it 2 years ago, it doesn't count for this year. Please make sure you're telling your friends. Please make sure that they are re-registering for a vote by mail. It doesn't count if they did it 2 years ago. So please make sure that they are doing that. So now that we've gone through all the fancy talking points, I want to give you my why. So when I was asked about coming and joining the campaign, I had to think about my why as to why we do this. Because my day-to-day life, I am a lobbyist, right? I spend my time helping other folks run for office and do political consulting and give advice. I kind of Olivia Pope for a living. That's really what I do. But my great-grandparents were an interracial couple in 1892, right? Where when interracial couples were not allowed, right? It was totally against the law. And my grandmother was biracial. And so I was born into a family of rule breakers, glass ceiling breakers. And my mother was a social worker, and she's African American. And in Long Island, when you take a job working for the government, you have to take a civil service exam. Any Long Islanders in the house? Hey, Suffolk County, Amityville, hey. And so back in 1979, when my mother took her job as a social worker, she was voting as a Democrat, but they told her she needed to register as a Republican to get her a job because she was a Black woman. So my mother took her job and registered as a Republican, but voted as a Democrat. And it wasn't until the legislature changed to Democrat that she was finally able to change her voter registration. My mother was always civically engaged. And the woman that ran my nursery was a white Jewish woman And she decided to get out of education. And she just wanted to run in the district that I lived in. And I grew up AME. She came to my mother and she says, I want to run for legislator, but I need your help. And so my mother said, well, you need to come to my church because you can't run in this district without the blessing from my church. It was the oldest black church in Long Island. And so she implored our help. I was 8 years old. My mom had me knocking on doors. So I'm out my mom canvassing. So by the time I was about 11 or 12, she says, her name was Miss Maxine Postel. She was my mentor. She says, Kyle would be a great politician or an attorney. And so at 11, I was answering phones in the legislator's office. That was my very first job. And so that's what launched my political career. And every job thereafter was always some sort of political, job. My mom goes on to run for union president. She was the first black union president for the AME union in Long Island as a social worker. My first time marching on Washington, I was 12 for the Homeless Coalition. Here I am, 46, starting my life over post-divorce, post-children in a same-sex relationship. And the Biden-Harris administration decides to codify same-sex and interracial marriages into law, protecting what my great-grandparents couldn't do legally, but my partner and I can now do legally. And so this is my why. Because this administration stands for everything I was born into. Everything. So this is why I stand here before you. This is why I have been working 12 to 16-hour days, raising 2 beautiful brown babies that are taller than me in Lake County, Florida. Right? Where when my son, when we first moved to Claremont, was the only brown child in his first grade class, and some little white girl came up to him and said, I can't marry somebody like Chase, his skin is too brown. And I had to tell my 6-year-old son that there's racism in this world. After my grandparents got married in 1892 as an interracial couple. And in the 2000s, I'm still telling my son that this exists. But this administration is fighting for this every day. So not just for seniors, Biden is out for seniors, Biden is out for gays, Biden is out for women, Biden is out for blacks, Biden is out for Latinos, Biden is out for all of us. And this is why I stand before you today. So let's turn this blue. Let us take back the White House again. Let us get out to vote. Let's make sure we push our vote by mail. Let's make sure we keep fighting for Florida. Let's make sure we win this election. Let's make sure Democrats, we are fired up and ready to fight. And let's go. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, following that, we have our Director-at-Large from the Club Board, Eric Lipsetz, will show us some of the things we already know, but explain explicitly why these threats matter and what the stakes are in this election.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Good. Yesterday, I attended Bill Sayers' presentation on the Trump trial and the consequences. Bill, sitting here in the office, it was great, as Bill always puts on great presentations. We all know that Trump has been convicted, and the first question that came from the audience was, is this appealable? To which Bill correctly responded, yes. And it was like the air came out of the meeting. Now, what I'm here to do today is to tell you, to follow up on what Kyle says, is I'm not necessarily here to give you good news. I'm not. I'm here to show you what the threats are that we are facing. And we are facing these threats literally on day one. If Trump becomes elected and we listen to what Trump says, within a very short period of time, we are going to be subject to martial law. How is that going to happen? Does the first line make already sense? The Trump will call for a roundup of undocumented people here in the United States, and then the cities, I anticipate, will resist. New York, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, my hometown, Detroit, San Francisco, even Dallas and places in the Midwest. And then what Trump will do, and he has said he will do, is he will call in the Army in order to conduct this particular roundup. When the Army goes in, your civil rights go out. This is what awaits us in the event that Trump is elected, and this is what January 2025 would look like in the event that Trump is elected. He will end women's rights. How will he do that, especially regarding abortion? He will use the Comstock Act, an 1890s act, which says, and I have the quote, that it prohibits the mailing of any drug designed, adapted, or intended for producing abortion. Not just in the mail. The Congress subsequently amended the Comstock Act in the early 1900s to include all interstate commerce. So what Trump will do, and if I could say this and it may scare you, even if we pass yes on 4 and get abortion rights enshrined in the Florida Constitution, it's my view that the Comstock Act and the federal initiative will trump, for lack of a better word, what we are going to do here in Florida. And this issue has already been raised. For those people who haven't, this was raised at the Supreme Court. And it took, of course, it already had 2 votes, and that was Alito and Thomas. But this is an issue that is going to be coming up between now and the end of June. When the Supreme Court decides that issue, it is likely that the Supreme Court will dodge it in saying that the doctors who brought this particular claim don't have standing. They weren't personally injured by it. But already there is talk that the state attorney generals from Republican states will sue, and my guess is they will have standing to prevent the distribution of mifepristone. And mifepristone and the other drug that's involved 63% of all abortions that are now taking place in the United States. This abortion issue is not just about abortion, it's about women's destinies. And I cannot determine how any mother or grandmother can vote for Trump and take away their daughter's destiny and interfere with her destiny. And for all the fathers out there, well, me too, and I have 2 daughters, my job is to protect their destinies. And I don't see how anybody who is male or female can vote to damage their daughters and their granddaughters. This is coming. This is coming perhaps in the next 2 weeks. He will abandon our allies. NATO, gone. He will turn his back on Europe, and most importantly, he will turn his back on Ukraine. This is what he said. Trump is in bed with Putin, Orban, Xi, Kim Il-jung, all these people he's in bed with. And if we abandon Ukraine, this matter will explode. It will explode because NATO countries that have been subject to being ruled by Russia, Lithuania, Poland, Latvia, even France, have talked about committing ground troops to Ukraine in the event of a Russian breakthrough. Trump, as soon as he comes in, if you recall, he said, I can settle the Ukraine problem in 1 day. Right? That settlement that he is going to impose by withholding American arms, which incidentally go to support our economy, that will be allowing Russia to make a land grab, which will happen every place else. Russia will then go to Moldova, and most importantly, China will make a move on Taiwan. This is the first couple months of the Trump administration. And for us, as was said by Kyle, he is going to repeal the ACA. How many times have the Republicans tried to do this? 50 times, I think, if I think it's the right number. Now, in the event that the ACA is repealed, we are going to have the uninsured numbers spike. What does that mean to you? That means that your premiums, for those of you who are still buying private insurance, are going to spike. And the reason they're going to spike is because the people who are providing care are not going to get paid, so they have to raise their prices in order to cover the money that they're not getting. When they spike, then people are not going to be able to pay for it, and then we're going to be looking at massive bankruptcies. This has happened before. We know what this story is. And when people have to face these kind of problems, then they have to go into bankruptcy, they're going to lose their homes. If you look on any document you have, if you have a HELOC or if you have a mortgage or anything else, you will find a clause that says you cannot protect your home in the event of a bankruptcy. Now here in Florida we have homestead acts, but on the other hand, in Florida we have a completely Republican Supreme Court. And we know what happens when you have a completely partisan Supreme Court. It happens in Florida, it happens in Georgia, where you may have seen the other day that the Georgia Supreme Court put on hold the Fannie Willis case indefinitely. And if you want to talk about judges, what's going to happen, all I can say is look at Eileen Cannon in the Mar-a-Lago case. Trump will poison the judiciary, so the only thing that it can do is put in Trump acolytes and follow whatever Trump's policies are, and if I may, the policy of the day. You may remember when Trump wanted to ban TikTok. Now he's on TikTok. Why is that? Because somebody gave him a $1.2 million campaign contribution. Trump promised the oil people, if you give me $1 billion, he will lift all environmental regulations and let them drill wherever they want. I was thinking about the battle. While we can be optimistic, I was thinking about the battle that we are entering in, and it's like Braveheart. Don't you know that movie? We're standing on one side, and all of a sudden the other army comes up over the other side. We are in danger, and we cannot kid ourselves that we are going to merrily waltz into this particular election. We are not. And those are the things. And I prepared these slides Wednesday. And today the headline is that Trump is going to take for himself the power to sequester dollars. So even if Congress passes a law and funds it, if Trump that day says, I don't feel like doing it, that law will not be implemented. We are in danger. Now, given the fact that we're in danger, there are ways that people in this club can fight back. And I am going to ask you at the end of this particular meeting, we have a way to do it. We think it's going to be successful. I'll be right at that table. come up and talk to me, and we're going to get what this club can do to alleviate this danger. And I agree with Kyle. When all is said and done, if you haven't seen the last Fox News poll, Trump ahead by 4 in Florida. Now, the other thing is there's the abortion amendment. The abortion amendment tends to swing people by 5 points. Look at all the numbers that have happened. In other words, if you use the actual numbers, and I'm not being Pollyannish, if you use the actual numbers and the experience of elections, we are 1 point up. Come and join me afterwards and we'll have a talk and I'll tell you exactly what we want to do. We're in trouble, let's meet the Bible. Thank you.
Question in back?
If that gentleman gets back up here and tell everybody what he that's what I want to hear already. That's why I came here today. I want to hear what we can do already.
Okay.
Ash Marlaw has put out a notice that is running for the state legislature, has put out an email in which he is saying that his Facebook posts now have generated over 27,000 clicks. What we want to do is we want to organize people to use your Facebook pages and encourage people and do one line. How can you vote for this guy? This guy's going to kill people. This guy's going to institute martial law. This guy's going to be a dictator. And we are going to have targeted messages, everybody sending it to their friends. If you get a friend request and you know the person and you see who the mutual things are, click yes. I've increased my number of friends by 30 over the past couple of days. We are then going to have coordinated messages that go out, and we will time the messages so they're going to start slow, and as we get closer to the election, we're going to continue to use our Facebook pages so we can not only reach people here in Florida, but for me, I can reach my Maryland friends. People can reach their New York, Long Island friends. People can meet their Iowa friends. So we will get this message out to people who are willing to listen, to say that this guy Trump is dangerous, he is un-American. You have no choice whatsoever, except to vote for Joe Biden. That's the plan. Come up and meet me up here, give me your email address, we'll get it underway. Fair enough?
All right, thank you, Eric. Next slide. All right, our speaker today is Elizabeth Ricci. She is a distinguished advocate for immigrant rights, a nationally recognized attorney in immigration law, an expert witness, and a sought-after commentator on major TV networks and national newspapers. She has come from Tallahassee this morning to address us and take your questions. She's accompanied by her husband and law partner, Neil Rapana. Please welcome Elizabeth Ricci.
Thank you for having me, Villages. My name is Elizabeth Ricci. I'm very appreciative of the invitation from your club and the Democratic Women's Club. I was president of the Democratic Women's Club of Leon County about 8 years ago. I'm here with my husband and law partner, Neil Randana, who's taking some pictures in the back. Thank you, Neil. We're going to talk today about the state of immigration in Florida and the United States, talk about some executive orders between asylum and amnesty, and I'll take some time to answer your questions. I do have my timer set, and I will speak quickly so we can be on time. So first, we're going to have a little quiz. So just think about these answers in your head, and we're going to go over them all at the end of the quiz. So true or false, There are less than 1 million undocumented immigrants in Florida and about 11 million in the United States. The next one. Florida is one of 10 states that makes up 75% of all green card holders. An undocumented alien cannot obtain a driver license in Florida, but can get auto insurance. How about this one? You thought that one was funny. An alien in deportation can work legally. Okay. A non-citizen who registers to vote but does not vote can be criminally prosecuted and deported for having registered. Immigration is currently adjudicating cases that were filed 23 years ago by Mexican filing for their Mexican Americans filing for their Mexican siblings. To prove a professional is not taking a job away from an American worker, the potential employer must advertise the position for 30 days online, 10 days in-house, and 2 Sunday classifieds, and at least 2 other mechanisms. Since February 2021, daily migrant encounters have exceeded 2,500 per day. That's undocumented encounters. The parent of an anchor baby must wait 36 years to be eligible for citizenship through their anchor baby. Stop guessing. The last one, a foreign-born veteran does not gain citizenship through military service. They're all true. So I'm going to read this quote. It's one of my favorites. I, in my own mind, have always thought of America as a place in the divine scheme of things that was set aside as a promised land. It was set here, and the price of admission was very simple. The means of selection were simple as to how this land should be populated. Any place in the world and any person from those places, any person with the courage, with the desire to rear up their roots, to tear up their roots, to strive for freedom, to attempt and dare to live in a strange and foreign place, to travel halfway across the world, was welcomed here. Anyone know who said that? Reagan. That's right, Ronald Reagan. Those were some words from his City on a Hill speech, his farewell speech, in January of 1989. We have fallen quite far. Trump has called immigrants, and in particular, people who come from certain countries and refer to those countries as shithole countries, specifically referring to Haiti, El Salvador, and some African countries. And he has, time and time again, said that people are coming here who are criminals, who come from insane asylums, and are, quote, bad people. We have to remember that we are a nation of immigrants. Our country was founded by people seeking a better life from discrimination, like Kyle was telling us, where fairness and justice are available to all, no matter one's country of origin. Immigrants from all nations have been integral in our success. So we'll talk about what's happening toward and against those goals. I was going to talk about DACA. I don't think we have time, but I'll go briefly over that DACA was an executive order. It was for young people who entered the country by a certain age, met certain requirements like not having a serious criminal history, being enrolled in school or an English program, and having been here since a certain amount of time. It's funny because many complained that DACA was unlawful because it was made through executive order and did not comply with the Administrative Procedures Act. But many of those same complainers fully supported Trump's executive orders prohibiting certain immigrants from entering the United States during COVID. So my point is that executive orders the presidents have wide discretion to issue them, whether they're for or against a particular policy. So we've heard of asylum and amnesty. They're two different things. So asylum is in the news quite a bit lately. We're going to get to that with the president's most recent actions. But amnesty is also a phrase we hear a lot, and they're not interchangeable. According to USCIS, which is the new iteration of INS, amnesty is a forgiveness of unlawful presence or breaches of status. When was the last amnesty program?
Reagan.
Also under Reagan, right? Reagan signed what's called IRCA, Immigration Reform and Control Act, also known as the Reagan Amnesty, and allowed roughly 3 million people in the country illegally to gain status. So what's happened recently is some Biden policies. The administration is exceptionally challenged now because of the situation at the southern border, which is driven by unprecedented levels of migration around the world. And that problem is only compounded by the continued failure of Congress to take meaningful acts to reform our immigration system. And executive action is likely the only recourse in the meantime. Remember, the president has wide executive authority. So let's talk about what asylum is. Asylum is the well-founded fear of persecution only based on the following criteria: race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. It is not fleeing crime, fleeing poverty. So it's the fear of that in the future or having suffered that in the past. However, in May of last year, the administration issued the Circumvention of Lawful Pathways Regulation, CLP, also known as the Asylum Transit Ban. The CLP was enjoined by a federal court and is still being litigated in the Ninth Circuit. During the appeal, it remains in effect. The CLP created a rebuttable presumption of ineligibility for asylum based on how the non-citizen entered the country and whether they applied for protection in transit. In other words, did they go to Canada first and apply for asylum there? But now, on the 4th of this month, the president signed a proclamation on securing the border. The new policy will effectively bar access to asylum for most people arriving between ports of entry when the volume arriving at the border reaches a certain level, 2,500 or more over a 7-day period. The complex and extensive restriction imposed by this policy are an erosion of due process and the asylum protections guaranteed by U.S. law, and they'll do little to solve the challenges that we're facing at the border. I want to talk about the difference between CLP and STB, meaning the securing the border and the CLP policy. So CLP is about the possibility of harm based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion. And the policy on the 4th is about probability. So it's possibility versus probability. And probability is defined by the interim final rule as substantially more than a reasonable possibility, but somewhat less than more likely than not. There's none. So let's move now from federal to state. You've probably heard of Senate Bill 1718 and Senate Bill 264. Senate Bill 1718 became law in May of last year. It's a comprehensive effort to restrict the ability of undocumented individuals who live and work in Florida by, among other things, dramatically enhancing the ability of state law enforcement to enforce immigration law, mandating the use of E-Verify by Florida employers with over 25 employees, restricting access to Florida driver licenses, as well as state bar licenses, and adding state civil and criminal penalties for violations of its provisions. You may have heard of the Constitution, which says basically that federal law is regulated by the federal government and that states don't have federal authority. But here we are. 1718 also made it human smuggling and a felony for a person to knowingly and willfully transport into Florida an individual whom the person knows or reasonably should know has entered the U.S. without inspection. This section has recently been enjoined for vagueness, keeping in mind that the governor also signed off on a $12 million appropriation to allow Florida to transport immigrants seeking asylum from Texas to Martha's Vineyard. Senate Bill 264 became law at the same time. 264 prohibits foreign principals from China, Venezuela, Syria, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and Cuba from owning or acquiring agricultural land in the state or owning or acquiring any interest in real property within 10 miles of any military installation or critical infrastructure. Permanent residents, green card holders, and dual citizens are exempt. The constitutionality is being challenged. We had dinner last night with a friend who's a professor at FSU, and he teaches physics. He said his department is being affected, especially in the mathematics section, because about half of the students are Chinese, and Chinese students have to be vetted by the board even after admission about whether they are allowed to remain at state universities. So they are down in the math department at FSU by about half. The importance of immigrants to Florida and the United States economy. We're experiencing an evolving demographic landscape within the growing presence of immigrants. Recent findings from MAP the Impact reveal that 21% of the state's population was foreign-born and comprised of more than a quarter of the state's workforce. In the same year, of 2021, immigrants constituted at least 1 in 5 entrepreneurs, generating $96 trillion in business income. Florida stood out with 1/3 of its entrepreneurs being foreign-born in 2021, and an increase of 87,500 immigrants who were entrepreneurs from 2016, the largest nationwide, resulting in over $11 billion in state revenue. The American Immigration Council's latest Fortune 500 report revealed that 45% of the new American companies in 2023 were founded by immigrants or their children. Florida, among the top 6 states with these companies, generated $219 million in revenue and employed over 1 million people worldwide. As of 2021, immigrant-led households in the state pay over $27 billion in state and local taxes. As consumers, immigrant-led households poured over $125 billion back into Florida's state economy. New data shows that Florida is currently home to 22,690 DACA recipients. Florida DACA recipients and DACA-eligible individuals paid $304 million in federal and state taxes last year. Undocumented immigrants comprise nearly 4% of our state's total population and over 5% of the state's labor workforce. Undocumented immigrants in Florida paid an estimated $1.5 billion in state taxes and $706 million in state and local taxes in 2021. So the economic value is there, but we continue, and especially in Florida, to try to make laws that circumvent the Constitution and are actually going to hurt our state and our country's economy. We have 7 minutes for questions.
How come, there are a lot of business owners, who profit from these undocumented workers. Where are they? Why aren't they speaking up? I heard
Great
someone
question.
else
There's business owners who are profiting. Because they're profiting, they're not speaking up. It's much easier to pay somebody who's undocumented a lower wage than what their American counterpart. So there's not an interest by the employer of that American, of that undocumented person to change this. Now, part of 1718 makes E-Verify a requirement. So you have 25 or more employees, you could be rated and fined, you could lose your license, that type of thing. So that may change that, but I don't see that happening really in essence.
But I mean, why don't they want to keep them?
They do want to keep them, and they want to keep them at a lower rate than their American counterparts.
So if there's a law against them, then
Well, there is a law. There are, I mean, they're called illegal immigrants because they're not supposed to be working to begin with. So we need a comprehensive fix where it's the employers who are pursued, not the little Mexican guy who's sending money back home every few months, who doesn't want to be here permanently, wants to help his family back home, but knows that if he leaves, he can't come back for 10 years. That's what the bar is. If you've been in this country for more than 1 year without authorization and you leave, you can't come back for 10 years.
Excuse me. Could we just request that anybody who has a question, please use the microphones on the side so that everybody can hear and that they'll be on the recording? I saw some hands. Can you please go to the side to the microphones?
Or we'll bring the microphone to you.
While they're waiting over there, I have a question, a two-part question. So I want to see if I understand what Biden did recently, and then if I understand it correctly, I don't understand the rationale. So if I understand it correctly, he's saying that if we have a lot of people coming to the border, then nobody can apply for asylum? Is that correct?
Basically, if we hit a certain number of people over a particular period, then they have to apply only under the Convention Against Torture, which is a different, higher legal standard than for asylum.
And what is the theory behind that?
Well, I think it's political pressure. He had to do something. And part of what people, I think, don't realize is why do we have these higher numbers? It's not anything that he's doing or not doing. It's that the conditions in the other countries are deteriorating so rapidly, people want to get the heck out of there. They don't probably qualify for asylum because they're coming because of poverty and crime. There's nothing in the law, the asylum law, to provide for that, but it's a workaround. You can file for asylum and you won't have your hearing for years. There are over 3 million cases stuck in immigration court right now. So without appropriating resources to the courts and customs and all of these federal agencies that deal with this, it's only going to get worse. That's why we have, you're filing for your sibling and it's taking 23 years. That doesn't make any sense.
Does the administration have lists of undocumented people by name, by address, where they are?
I don't think they're that sophisticated. No. I don't think there's any kind of a list. Ironically, when people are working with a fake social, their money is going into a suspension fund, a multi-billion-dollar suspension fund that could actually fund an entire wall, but that money can't go anywhere without an act of Congress because it doesn't really belong to whomever it's paying by. It's either a fake number or someone else's number. So that would be the closest thing, is if we had some kind of system that allowed people who are undocumented. One of the questions in that quiz was about people in deportation working legally. Ironically, yes, that's the case. If you have an immigration court date coming up, you're in proceedings, you can ask for a work authorization. So you're undocumented, but you're eligible to work. So we do have a list of those people, but that's much fewer than the actual number of people who are undocumented.
Regardless of the economic advantages, where does the Constitution authorize undocumented aliens? I think you keep mentioning that it's against the Constitution. Where?
No, I didn't do that. They're undocumented because they don't have documents. So that it is not part of the Constitution. I did not exactly say that. No, I'm saying what's unconstitutional is states taking federal action to so that's like my saying, what do you think about Florida regulating the price of stamps? We don't have the authority to do that. I didn't say it was violating the Constitution to begin. Go ahead.
are these undocumented people paying into our social security system?
The answer is
And where is
yes.
this money ever gonna go to?
Right, so that's what I just mentioned with the suspension fund. So if somebody's using a number that's not theirs, or that's a fake number, the money goes in, but it doesn't come out, and it's in a multi-billion-dollar suspension fund that was taken act of Congress to take it out.
Hi. We all know that lots of people know all about us, right? Can't hide anything today. Is there a way, or do we do this, when people come to the border, that they can be checked out? You know, we're talking about the small amount that are criminals, because that's the big thing you hear, they're all criminals, all
Right,
this.
so that already exists, right? So if somebody's coming to this country and requesting asylum at the border, which is mostly what's happening, they have to get fingerprinted and vetted, they do an interview, we do know who they are, they have to give an address, and they have a follow-up date with court. So it's not that we don't know. I think the question is, why are they coming here, and how are we treating them once they are here?
Can you speak to the role of the Mexican government in cooperating or not cooperating with their immigration or the folks who are crossing through
Sure.
Mexico?
So I worked at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, and I have a lot of good friends who still live and work in Mexico. And having been in this field now for over 20 years, I can tell you there's no incentive by Mexico to help fix this at all. Number one, remittances through Western Union alone are in the billions. Mexico has no interest in telling the U.S. to fix things, because then these folks aren't going to come here, save their money, send it home. The dollar's worth much more than the peso, and that is helping fuel the Mexican economy. So there's no real reason economically, I'm not talking about why it would be the right thing under international law, but why they would be interested in it. Yeah.
What or who is the solution?
Who's the solution? It's not a simple question. So part of this issue, again, is why are people coming here? We can't solve what's happening in other countries. And I'm not proposing that we go in other countries and fix their infrastructure and have anti-corruption efforts in their courts and fix their schools. But other countries do have an obligation to have systems that are not corrupt, that are functioning. But we have an obligation to secure our border and to manage it properly with resources that are not currently being allocated and laws that make sense. It does not make sense to have a law that says if you want to petition for your sibling and your sibling's already here, they can't wait out of the country. If they leave, they can't come back for 10 more years, but if they stay here, they have to wait for 23 years. That makes no sense. We need a comprehensive reform, and we need Congress to act, because executive orders are Band-Aids that can be changed very easily by a subsequent administration. So I think really the answer is we can fix it by voting and making sure that we have policies and lawmakers in place that will help fix this situation. I appreciate the invitation and your time. Thank you very much.
Next slide, please. So I was at the Belvedere Library, Friends of the Village Library book room yesterday, and I was looking at the current releases, and one book was in backwards and upside down. So all you could see were the leaves of the pages. So I said, well, that's odd. So I took it out, turned it around, and read The Courage to Be Free by Ronnie Sands. So I put it back the way I found it. And know what else is upside down and backwards? Like some of the villagers flying their flags incorrectly. Next slide, please. I'm going as white. Thanks to our Facebook group users who posted this, I found it in the group. If you don't belong, there's 2,000 people who are local Democrats in that group. They're not all club members. And they have way too much fun, so you should join them whenever you can. Back to a more serious matter, club business. I'm going to call up Amy Shaw, your elected parliamentarian. We alerted you in the Buzz and the Buzz Extra that we're changing the bylaws. I'm sure you all went to the link and read every word of the bylaws. This is a every once in a while thing we do just to clean them up, and we're going to vote on them by voice. No written ballots today.
It's great.
Okay, y'all, listen up. This is the most fun we're going to have this morning. As Dennis said, he sent out a copy of the bylaws to everyone with the proposed amendments. The process here is that we're going to vote here by mail vote, or excuse me, let's go back on my mind, by voice vote. And then our bylaws, as we approve, have to go to the Sumter County Democratic Executive Committee and then up to the Florida Democratic Party for approval. So this is our first step. Basically, we didn't make any significant substantive changes to them. As Dennis said, it was just sort of a periodic review. We fixed grammar and so forth. We removed irrelevant sections, such as things that only apply to the organizational meeting, which have long since come and gone. We did changes to bring us into compliance with the Florida Democratic Party and the Sumter County DEC, because we're chartered under both of those organizations, and we have to be in compliance or we don't get to stay. We also put in a section making amendments self-executing. And what this means is that our bylaws will be automatically amended to include any amendment that is made requiring something on our part by the DEC or the Florida Democratic Party, so that we will continue to be in compliance regardless of what changes they make until we can then have another session like this and make the amendments and change them. So does anyone have any questions?
All right, I need a motion to approve the revised bylaws. Do I have a motion? Thank you. I need a second. Second? Second? Okay, I declare we have a quorum. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passed. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Let's move on. Next slide. Okay. So the board has been busy, as you might guess, and we wanted to make sure that you were aware of what we're up to. We have 1,150 some members now, and we're wanting more. So we've decided to start a membership drive. And one of the ways we've done that is through a social media advertising campaign. We're doing a trial right now on Facebook and Instagram. The ads were created by our friend Nathan Sharp, and we'll show you them now. Next slide, please. The ad on your left is an Instagram post. The one on the right is Facebook. We're spending a maximum of $500 for both design and presentation and placement of these ads. And we'll see how it goes. If we do well, getting new members, we might continue to do these or do them in a cycle to continue to try to make the club bigger. You'll also see the Facebook ad on our website pretty soon, because a lot of times people are new to the area, go to our website first, and we want them to join right away. The other things we've been doing recently, spending reduced money, is we have been doing sponsorships. So we're doing another sponsorship for the Sumter County Democrats for a murder mystery event coming up later this month. We did a sponsorship for the Marion County Democratic Party Gala, because we have a slice of Marion within the villages, and we're trying to get members out of there. We've been exploring ads in the connections, the club connections section of the Villages Daily Sun and on villagesnews.com. And we're talking about a mixer, which is where you can get involved directly, because the mixer will probably be inviting each club member, if you wish to participate, to bring a non-member registered Villages Democrat with you. And we'll buy you some snacks and maybe give you a drink, and then we'll give them the pitch to join the club. So look for those details later. We'll post them in the buzz. Next slide, please. Among partnerships that we do, we have the Education Forum, which is partnering with us on the school supplies drive for public schools. On your chairs when you came in today, you found a flyer, so you don't have to try to read that little one over in the corner, of all the different things that are being asked for. This is headed up by Sally Moss, a member of the Sumter County Schools Board. She is a Democrat. And we have a long history in the club of supporting our local schools and school teachers and students. You might remember, some of you last year, we did this as a matching funds drive, where we put up as a club $300 and asked you to match it. And as you always do, you far exceeded the amount we asked for, which more than doubled it, and the schools were very happy to receive that money. So announcing today that we're doing that again. We'll put up the first $300 to match whoever goes on our website, hits the donation button, and clicks on the button that is for school supplies. Many of you already have brought supplies to the table after seeing the notices in the buzz. Thank you very much. We'll continue to do that at our next meeting. The Education Forum, which meets the fourth Sunday of every month at Manatee at 2 o'clock. We'll take donations there. And on the flyer, there's a way to directly donate by check to the school's foundation itself, not through the club. So those are just some ways that we help in our community. We'll also have a table again at our July 13 meeting here. So if you go out to Walmart or someplace, you buy some supplies, you want to drop them off, we'll deliver them so that they all go to the right place. So thank you for that. I think I have one more slide. Yes, our DECs are here. Bob Berg from the Sumter DC wanted to say a word.
Just three things real quickly. A week from tomorrow, we're having a pride party at our headquarters over in Wildwood, 300 South Main. It's the 16th in the afternoon from 1 to 3. We're going to have games, prizes, and speakers. Immediately following this, for those of you who are interested in being a little bit more active on direct voter outreach, Julian Timoner is taking over as chair of our phone banking team. And we're having phone banking training also at our headquarters immediately following this meeting over at 300 South Main. And so if you can't make it today, let Julian know. He will catch up with you later. Also, we're canvassing inside and outside of the villages. Next week, on Saturday morning, it'll be outside of the villages, but almost on a daily basis, we're inside the villages, knocking on Democrats' doors for our new and inconsistent voters. If you're a consistent voter, we're not going to knock on your door. We need you to help us knock on some of the inconsistent voters. So we have a robust Get Out the Vote program to support the Biden team with texting, robocalling, phone banking, postcarding, as well as door-to-door canvassing. So we've got a very active plan ahead. With your help, we'll turn Florida blue. And Sumter County, as you know, led in Democratic turnout the last election, both in the general and the primary. So thanks for your efforts.
Thank you, Bob. Allison Firth is here from the Lake County DEC. She has an announcement.
Hard to follow up with that, but we are also canvassing, so you'll be seeing us the next 3 Saturdays in a row. So until the end of June, we will be canvassing. We'll be knocking on doors. We call them warm Dems, similar to what Bob was referring to. Those that have voted in the past, and we need their continued support. So you'll be seeing us around. We also will start in July and August of doing a very hard push for phone banking that will continue, as well as canvassing when weather permits. And we will be exactly doing similar to what Sumter does, which is really getting out the vote, making sure that people do phone bank, that people do get postcards, they know where to vote, they know where to go. That seems to be a challenge a lot of days, especially when we're getting gerrymandered and changed on that basis. But we do have something from a fundraising perspective at the end of June. We have a location in Leesburg called the OSV, I've never heard of it, OSV Event Center, and we are going to have what's called Just Desserts. And if you go to www.lakedemocrats.com, this is a fundraiser for Lake County and the state of Florida and Lake County Democrats, and we'd love to have you there. It's an event from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, so hopefully we'll see you there. Homemade goods, homemade, no Publix at this event. Thank you.
Well, at the very beginning, I mentioned in the words of Joe Biden that we must stand together. And while he did it in one context, I want to talk about it in another real quick. Bob Berg was kind enough when he heard from the Biden-Harris folks to say, well, maybe you should just go to the Village's club meeting because it's this Saturday. And so he put us in touch with Kyle and with the Biden-Harris and the coordinated campaign, and they made it happen. So thank you to Bob for giving us our first speaker today. And then about a month ago, Sue Dubman talked with Ash Marwa, our program manager, and said, we have someone who's really interesting, Elizabeth Ricci, and he talked about her a little bit, and we were thinking of having her come to our club, but maybe it would be better at your club because you have a bigger room and more people come. So we did that in collaboration with the Democratic Women's Club of the Villages. And these are the things that make the club and the Democratic organizations within our county function, is that we all work collaboratively together to do the best possible job we can. So thank you for the Women's Club. And thank you to you all for sitting through the whole thing. So go out and have a good day. Stay hydrated. We're adjourned.